Recently, I conducted a subjective assessment whilst on placement. This required me to ask the patient a series of questions relating to both their health and personal life. I asked the patient a series of questions whilst trying to incorporate the skills I've been developing from physiotherapeutic skills this year. These skills involve being as open to the patient as possible with my body language and communicational skills, whilst being able to ask the appropriate questions. I also made sure that I maintained eye contact when possible and summarised the relevant key points which were made by the patient. I felt that through the development of these skills, I was able to effectively record most of the patient's notes whilst ensuring they felt comfortable and relaxed enough in my company to share their personal information. It's important that these skills are developed well enough to ensure that the patient interview is effective and successful, whilst also ensuring that the patient feels comfortable as possible. I noted and summarised the points made by the patient in order to reassure them that I accurately understood what they meant when describing their presenting injury to me. I also ensured that I summarised the key points on the assessment form to ensure clarity for future clinicians who may review the patient's notes. Throughout the assessment, I missed on the opportunity to ask a few more relevant questions. I feel as though this was down to nerves at the beginning, where I perhaps wasn't thinking as clearly. However, whenever I relaxed into the patient interview and grew more in confidence, I was able to think with greater clarity and objectivity, which then made asking appropriate questions and retracting the relevant information much easier. As mentioned above, at the beginning of the interview, I felt nervous and my mind was racing. However, after the initial stages of the patient interview, I began to relax and then found asking the questions and building a rapport with the patient to be much easier. When this happened, I felt feelings of self-efficacy increased, and I became much more comfortable. In future, to help with minimising missing out on these relevant questions, I will incorporate notational cues in the assessment form. This could be as basic as putting down 24 hours to prompt me to ask how the patient pain levels feel over a 24-hour period. I will also attempt to implement the use of open and closed questions more effectively in order to retract the most relevant information from the patient. I have also learned that in order to help the patient feel more comfortable and relaxed, it's important firstly to ensure that I feel as comfortable and relaxed as possible too. This is imperative so that I can engage with the patient effectively with the use of appropriate body language, eye contact, and summarising in order to demonstrate my understanding of the patient. I have also learned that the importance of knowing when and how to ask different questions to elicit the desired response in order to determine the source of the present complaint. My learning plan from this experience is to practice these skills as much as possible in order to ensure and maintain future development. I will prioritise the areas which could be improved in future, as I mentioned earlier. While in placement, I will make a conscious effort to implement these changes. One strategy that will be easy to implement will be the incorporation of those notational cues that I spoke about. For others, such as asking the open and closed questions, I will look to develop these with peers in my private time outside of studies, whilst looking to further put these into practice whilst on future placements.